Make sure to subscribe to our channel, join our Discord, and also follow us on Instagram so you always have the support that you need to really enhance your account and get yourself to the next level. Also, if you stick around until the end of the video, I'm going to show you how you can save a lot of money when you make in-game purchases by getting some amazing cashbacks each time you purchase anything. Hello everyone and welcome to another video of the Sky channel. So this is the last of the PvE tier lists for May 2025 and this is for Guardians. Now I know many of you may have already seen the shooter and carrier PvE tier lists that are released not too long ago and therefore you probably know the drill, but I'll still repeat it just in case it's the first video that you came across. Firstly, the rankings are based on the ants as well as their awakenings if they're already released by the time I'm making this video. So any ant that's in any category, we're also taking into account the fact that they have the awakening and how that awakening impacts the scores in Groundhog and Pangolin. Additionally, we're not looking at ants by themselves, we're also looking at how ants impact others and work well in a team. For example, in the case of gold armor, you know that the ant has the awakening that increases damage in Groundhog and Pangolin for not just itself but also all the other ants in its squad, and therefore it's going to rank a little bit higher than if it didn't have that ability. Thirdly, we've broken it down into 4 categories. S+, which are the best ants to use in PvE, S, which are still really amazing to use in PvE, especially if you don't have any of the S+ ones, A, which is still good, they are still reasonable choices for you to use in PvE, and then B, which is fine if you do not have any better options. Now there is no C and below, and the reason is because not every ant is meant for PvE, right? There's a huge list of guardians and universals, and there's no need to go through all of them because not all of them are really suitable for PvE. And finally, I just hinted towards this. This is not only looking at guardians, it's also looking at universals. Like you can see gold armor, you can see crimson pearl, and you can see a bunch of others. And the reason for that is because you can use universal special ants with guardians as well, so it doesn't make any sense to not include them in the Guardian PvE rankings. So without further ado, let's get started with the S+. And the first one there is Iron Elephant. I'm certain it doesn't surprise you, Iron Elephant came out and it was one of the biggest hitters in PvE and PvP for Guardians. Now if you go through his skills, you'll notice that he does a lot of damage to multiple enemy squads. And if you look at skill number 2, there's a guaranteed critical hit, which makes the damage even more. Skill number 5, high chance of doing a lot of damage to every enemy squad in certain rounds. And then skill number 8, at 8 star, it says that its squad deals 25% more damage. So a pretty nice boost in damage by itself, and then it also says that every time it receives any buff like healing, shield, or any other buffs like that, it increases skill damage by 8%, skill damage reduction, healing, which we don't care about. So what we really care about is skill damage plus 8%, and it lasts the entire battle and can stack up to 4 times. So after 4 stacks, it's 32% extra skill damage. So overall, a very powerful ant because of its ability of dealing a lot of damage through skill 2 and skill 5, and then skill 8 increasing the damage even further by a simple increase in damage and then also an increase in skill damage based on getting certain buffs if you have ants that can allow it to get those buffs. It also has an awakening, and you can see the first one, it says during the battle, attack and defense of Iron Elephant plus 50%. All buff effects of the 8th skill are increased by 40%. Now if you remember, the 8th skill also includes the flat 25% more damage that also gets enhanced thanks to your awakening. In addition, if you have any ants that are able to give it those healings, shields, and other buffs, those effects are also increased by 40% thanks to the awakening. Then level 10, it increases the chance of triggering the 5th skill by 5%, so reducing the chance that you might not actually trigger the 5th skill in any of those rounds. And then at level 20, the stackable time of the 8th skill goes up by 1, which means that now it can stack up to 5 times and hence a 40% increase in skill damage. Overall, a very powerful ant, and it is actually really good for PvP as well as PvE. Now we're going to go over to our next S+ tier, and that is the White Crystal. The White Crystal is a new ant that just came out in the Surreal Wetlands, and it is actually a really good damage dealer. If you go to skill number 2, you'll notice that its squad gains 10% of the frontline squad's attack attribute, and then after the frontline Guardian squad deals damage 8 times, its squad deals 350% damage to all enemy squads. And you can silence them as well, but that doesn't matter much for PvE. So firstly, it increases on squad's attack, and then if the frontline squad deals damage a bunch of times, it actually ends up triggering its own damage dealing skill, which does a lot of damage to all enemy squads. So in the frontline, you want to have an ant that can deal damage many times, because then you can trigger your skill 2 more often and deal a lot of damage to the enemies. Not just that, of course, you're also increasing your own attack based on 10% of the frontline squad's attack, which is amazing as well because attack increases your damage. Then if you go to skill number 5, at maximum level, 75% chance, which is a high chance, to deal 450% damage to the enemy squad with the highest power, which means targeting one squad, but still, a very high chance and a very high damage. But it doesn't end there. It also increases its own squad's attack by 50% for 2 rounds, and it's stackable, which means that if you release this 2 times in a row, you've already increased your attack by 100%, which means that you'll be doing a lot more damage because attack enhances your damage. And finally, the 8th skill, at maximum level, we're talking 60% chance to deal 225% damage to all enemy squads. It also says that the skill damage rate increases by 10% every time it targets a shooter squad, stacking up to 5 times, but in PvE, you're going to be targeting Groundhog and Pangolin, though I'm not 100% sure if in the back end, during the Guardian Pangolin day, if they have some sort of a system that makes the Pangolin a shooter or not, but I don't think so. So for now, we're only going to focus on the first part, which is 60% chance to deal 225% damage to all enemy squads, which is outstanding as well because we're talking all enemy squads and there's no round of preparation, right? This can happen every round if you're lucky. So overall, a very nice ant. And of course, like most damage dealers, its skill number 7 is actually giving an extra attack to all Guardian squads in the unit, which is helpful as well. Now we're going to go to the last S plus tier, and that is the Leaf Devourer. Now the Leaf Devourer is rather old, right? It came out in S1 and it's still relevant, just like the Wise Berserker is. And that's because of its capabilities in PvE, enhanced by the Awakening, of course. Skill number 2, if you take a look at the maximum level effect, prepares for 1 round, then has an 80% chance to attack the enemy 3 times, dealing 140, 280, and 560 damage respectively. So 80% chance is a high chance. The damage doubles every time, right? So the first one is 140, then multiply by 2, 280, then multiply by 2, 560. But if you add it all up, that's a pretty nice amount of damage. 980% damage, of course, with 1 round of preparation, but that's still a really nice amount of damage. Then skill number 5, at maximum level, its squad gets an extra 12.5% skill damage, but not just once. It actually stacks every round, and it can stack up to 100%. So unlike how you have other skills that give an extra skill damage flat, this one is actually skill damage every single round. So the first round, you're talking 12.5%, then 25%, and then by the 4th round, you're at 50%, and by the 8th round, you're at 100% increase in your skill damage. This, of course, really enhances the amount of damage Leaf Devourer can do in longer battles, right? So if it's a 8-round battle, like PvE is always going to be 8 round, by the 8th round, Leaf Devourer's damage is going to be really high compared to the first round. And then skill number 8, at maximum level, in its squad increases Guardian attack by 15% and deals 240% damage to 2 random enemy squads every single round. So it increases on attack and then it deals damage every single round, guaranteed. It's not even a 70%, 80%, it's a 100% chance that you're going to deal this damage to 2 random enemy squads every single round. And that damage is significant as well, right? 240% to 2, that's 480% damage every single round, guaranteed, after you increase your own attack by 15%, hence do even more damage. To make things even better, it got an Awakening, and you can see Leaf Devourer's damage flat goes up by 25% in the Awakening, which is absolutely amazing because you're getting so many other skill damage buffs. Now you're getting a flat damage buff as well. And then the 8 skills damage now targets all squads. So remember the 240% damage to 2 squads, well, it's now 240% damage to all 3 squads, guaranteed every single round. The next one says that the chance of triggering the second skill goes up up by 5%, which is great. And then a really cool thing, in the first 3 rounds, the effect of the 5th skill, which gives the extra skill damage every single round, is doubled. Now, it doesn't mention that the maximum cap of 100% is doubled. It just mentions that the first 3 rounds, the effect is doubled. So my assumption is that you're going to reach that extra 100% skill damage 3 turns earlier. So you'll be stacking 25% for the first 3 turns. So that's 75% by the 3rd turn. Then by the 5th turn, you should already be at 100% extra skill damage, which really enhances your skill damage potential. So with all of that, you can see why the Leaf Devourer is an S+ tier. It does a lot of damage, and it has a lot of abilities of increasing its own damage. We're either increasing its own attack or increasing the skill damage or just flat out damage increase. Definitely an S+ tier for PvE. And by the way, the lineup I've seen most people use with the highest amount of success is Leaf Devourer, White Crystal, and Iron Elephant in this particular order. And that covers the S+ tier, and now we can go over to the S tier and talk about them. Let's start with the Hairy Panther. And honestly, there was a bit of debate on whether it should be an S+ tier or S tier, and in the end I decided to make it an S, as if I did Hairy Panther in the S+, I'd probably also have to add the Proatta into S+, which we're going to talk about next. Honestly, I think after it gets an awakening, it'll probably be S+ tier, but not right now. So we are talking about a lot of damage, right? You can see the skills do a lot of damage. They also have the ability to suppress the enemy, which normally doesn't matter much for PvE, but it does for Hairy Panther, because in skill number 8, it actually does more damage if the enemy is under control. And then skill number 5, which does a bunch of damage to all enemies during certain rounds. Overall, 3 really strong damage dealing skills, making Hairy Panther a really nice choice for PvE. Next up, we're going to go to Proatta. And Proatta used to be a pay to win and it was one of the really powerful ones. It was like Lathi Sniffer for shooters and Proatta for guardians. Everyone knew that Proatta was really, really powerful, and it was effective in both PvP and PvE. Now it's sort of like a free to play. You can even get its awakening for free, which makes it really cool. Of course, it's a little bit of a grind to get it up there, because it does take a lot of time for you to collect enough to upgrade the awakening or even star up Proatta. Now, the interesting thing between Hairy Panther and Proatta is that I asked a bunch of people their perspectives on whether Proatta is better or Hairy Panther is better. And the very funny thing is that the free-to-play players told me that the Hairy Panther is much better, and the whales told me Proatta is better. Now, why could that be? Well, one difference is that the whales, they have Proatta at 8 star, max awakening, probably level 40. And then the free-to-play players, they have Proatta at low stars and probably a weak awakening like myself. So there's where that difference came from, and eventually I'm like, you know what? Let's make it standard. We all know that Hairy Panther and Proatta are not better than Iron Elephant and White Crystal, so let's just put them one step below and everyone's gonna be happy. So if you go through the skills, you're gonna notice that it does have some damage dealing potential, and it does target a bunch of squads, but it also seems to have a lot of defensive capabilities as well as targeting specifically shooters, which you're not going to be targeting if you're targeting Groundhog and Pangolin. So it does give the vibe that it's more of a PvP ant, but it still does a decent amount of damage through its skills. Now, the awakening makes things quite interesting, and if you note, only the first one really matters, and the first one is the one that increases every time you upgrade the awakening, while level 10 and level 20, once you unlock them, they're flat bonuses. The first one says, whenever Proatta uses a combat skill, has a 25% chance of increasing attack and defense by 95% for 2 turns. This effect is stackable, and it doesn't say that there's a limit on how many times it can stack this 95% bonus within a single round. Release 3 skills, and if you're lucky, potentially, we're talking almost 300% extra attack that's now stacked for 2 rounds. Do the same next turn, that's 600% attack. And now you can see why some of the whales that I've been talking to, they think Proatta is really, really powerful, because they definitely have Proatta at Golden Awakening level 40, while most of the free-to-play players are probably going to be like me, maybe not level 1 like myself, but Green Awakening, which increases the attack and defense by 50% as opposed to 95. The other 2 flat increases up basically targeting shooters. So it's not that relevant to us. So overall, decent abilities in doing damage. The Awakening is pretty interesting because it does give you the ability, if you're lucky, to stack a lot of attack, which can hence increase the damage potential even more. And now we're going to go into the last ant in the S tier, and that is Proatta. Now Proatta is another interesting one. It's a little bit like Proatta in the fact that it is sort of PvP, but it still does manage to do a lot of damage in PvE as well. If you look at the skills, the first one is quite interesting because it does give you an extra skill damage of 45%. This is quite amazing because, well, skill damage of 45% means that you'll be doing a lot of damage through your skills. Skill number 5 is really interesting as well. Very high chance, 80%, of dealing 450% damage to one enemy squad. The second part increases its defense by 70% for 2 rounds, and it can be stacked, which usually wouldn't matter, but if you look at skill number 8, in the first 3 rounds, all of our squads convert 10% of their defense into attack. It's not just self, but rather other powerful ants that you might be using. They get a boost in attack in the first 3 rounds because, well, 10% of their defense is also being added as their attack. And then it deals 550% damage to all enemy squads. That's 1650% damage that we're talking. So really amazing. And then it also gets an Awakening, which makes things even better. First, it says that the skill effect of Proatta's 8th skill, the one that converts defense into attack, is enhanced by 8%. So even more attack and even more damage for all of your squads. And then level 20, the 8th skill duration, which was originally 3 rounds, is now increased to 4 rounds, which is definitely helpful for PvE because we just went through how nice the 8th skill is to enhance our abilities in PvE. So that's the last of our S tier, and now we're going to go into the A tier, and we're going to start talking a little bit less about every single ant because now we're going into the lower categories, so I don't want to make this video very long and boring for you all. The first one is Crimson Pearl, and Crimson Pearl is a universal ant, and it's quite a nice damage dealer. Skill number 2 is its main damage dealing skill. It has a high chance of dealing damage 3 times to the enemy, and then because of skill number 5, every time it deals damage to any enemy, it adds a parasitic effect, and anytime any row of the enemy has 3 parasitic effects stacked up, they actually get a very high amount of damage done to them using skill 5. So we're talking 700% damage to that squad. So if skill number 2 targets the same one row 3 times, not only is it doing a lot of damage to skill 2, you're also adding a 700% damage potentially to the enemy. So imagine the amount of damage we're talking. Skill number 8 is quite interesting as well, although it's more interesting for carriers and also interesting for shooters. In Guardian, it's less interesting, but let's just go through the whole thing because it is relevant as we're going to be talking about the Awakening soon. So any squad, based on which type of ants it's leading, it gets different effects. So shooters, you get a skill crit increase of 60%. Guardians, 70% chance to heal our squad with the lowest power, which isn't too interesting for us, so let's just ignore that. And then carriers, before every round, the skill damage increases by 35% and it's stackable. Now, of course, we're leading Guardians, so we're just getting the heals, which doesn't matter at all. But if you go to the Awakening, you'll notice something very interesting. During combat, there's a 50% chance to trigger the additional soldier type effect of Crimson Pearl's 8th skill, the effect of which is 60% of the original effect. Now, here's where it gets interesting. 8th skill is useless for us in PvE if you're leading Guardians because it's giving heals. However, now there's a 50% chance that you might get either carrier or shooter effects with a 60% effect of the original effect if you have this at Golden Awakening. So we're talking an increase in skill damage, or we're talking an increase in skill crit rate. Both of these will enhance your damage. So while the 8th skill doesn't help us by itself, the Awakening does make skill 8 rather reasonable as well. Now at level 10 and level 20, you can see that you do get certain abilities that enhance your 5th skill by either increasing the damage rate or by reducing the number of parasitic effects needed to deal that amount of damage, which is quite helpful as well. Now the real reason why Crimson Pearl is S in both shooter and carrier tier lists but A in the Guardian one is because of the fact that the skill 8 does not really help in PvE. Overall, it's still a nice ant and it's still still worth using if you do not have any of the other S plus or S category ants, or if you just don't have them starred up or awakened. The last one in the A category is gold armor. Now gold armor, I'm sure probably everyone knows about it. It's one of the first ants that a lot of us got, and it has 3 skills that can do a reasonable amount of damage. But what makes it really interesting is its awakening. And you can see that first of all, gold armor gets a skill damage increase of 25%, but the very interesting thing is that the damage of all of our squads for Groundhog and Pangolin go up by 20%. So not just gold armor, but the other 2 ants that you're using with gold armor are also getting a 20% increase in damage, which is quite amazing. And that's basically what really bumped the gold armor up to become an A tier in pretty much all of the different classes. The other 2 abilities are good as well, but of course the first one is the really important one that I wanted to focus on. Now let's go to the B tier, and we're going to quickly talk about the different ants that are included in this B tier. Firstly, Jack Jumper. Its skills do have a decent ability of dealing damage, but of course its awakening makes things quite interesting as well. You can see every time Jack Jumper deals a combat skill, increases the attack of all of our squads by 20%. So not just Jack Jumper, but all of the other squads as well. The second one talks about a 15% increase in skill damage of Jack Jumper, which is great as well. And then at level 20, the first ability they talked about, 20% increase in attack every single time Jack Jumper releases a skill, is now increased to 40% for Jack Jumper, while it stays 20% for the other ants in our squad. That's Jack Jumper. Now we're going to go to the next one, Crimson Fragger. Crimson Fragger's damage was somewhat comparable to Jack Jumper. It was actually better than Jack Jumper until Jack Jumper got its awakening, but you can see that skill number 5 does a little bit of damage to the enemy 2 times. Then skill number 8 is quite interesting in the fact that it increases its own squad's damage by 35%, and that's a really good one, and it lasts for 2 rounds, and then it deals some damage as well to all enemy squads. So that's all for Crimson Fragger. We're going to go over to the next one, Dusky Lurker. Now Dusky Lurker does have some skills that deal a bunch of damage, but the real cool thing about it is that it increases the damage of your back row. You can see in skill number 5, 60% chance to deal some damage, and then increases the next skill damage of the backline by 35%. So if you have a really powerful backline attacker, a 35% increase in skill damage is quite helpful. And then if you go to skill number 8, whenever the battle starts, it increases the attack of all of our squads by 65%. A higher attack means a higher damage, so of course it's quite helpful. That's all for the Dusky Lurker. Now we're going to go into the next B tier, and that is Mimicry Master. Now Mimicry Master does have the capability of dealing a lot of damage, but you can see the probabilities of getting that damage across are fairly low. And then the Awakening, it really targets skill number 8, and what it does is increases the chance of triggering skill 8 to 100% in the first round, then increases the skill damage of the 8th skill by 20%, and it also gives an extra ability to increase the damage taken by the target of the 8th skill by 20% for 1 round. And since the 8th skill targets all squads, you're basically increasing the damage that all squads take by 20% for 1 round. So overall, it's not that amazing, but you know what, if you don't have a better ant, you can still get away with using Mimicry Master, especially if you have its Awakening unlocked. And finally, the last one is Golden Sugar. Now, Golden Sugar is able to do a bunch of damage through its skills. It does target multiple squads and does a reasonable amount of damage. And then the Awakening enhances its damage by allowing it to release skill 8 a second time after it's been released, by increasing the damage of the 5th skill and also increasing the trigger chances of the 5th and 8th skills. Overall, the Golden Sugar is able to do a reasonable amount of damage in PvE. And before you go, I do want you to know that you can save a lot of money in the Ants Underground Kingdom using Aptoide with my promo code. The steps are quite simple. I'm linking a video to the description of this video, or you can click the button that's going to appear at the top of the screen that'll take you to that video. Follow the steps and start saving a lot of money like a lot of other Ants players do. If you have any questions, you can join our Discord and ask questions there from myself or from the community, and I'll be extremely grateful if you use our promo code because you'll be saving a lot of money while also supporting our channel. And that's all I wanted to cover in this video. Let me know in the comments below if you have any feedback or any other interesting video ideas, because I always love to hear what you guys want to watch so that I can cater my videos based on what you guys are most interested in. Very soon I'll drop the tier lists image in Discord and our Instagram, and you're welcome to share it with your friends, your alliance, or Facebook, or wherever you want to share it. If you liked the video, please like it, please subscribe to our channel, share the link with your friends so that they can benefit from it as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.